and we're live.
Live or recording?
Recording.
Oh, God, don't scare
Do
me
it
like
live.
that. Doing it live.
All right. All right. What's up, guys? This is the Power Mushroom, and I'm here with Scruncho from Scruncho Gaming, Nam from Namdi, and the Spoony Bard from Gaming with Spoons. We've all had a long day, so we're gonna push through this because we have quite a few topics in there. Actually, some pretty interesting topics. But Spoons, you have the first topic.
Yeah, so I'll just come out and say it. Violence in video games in the real world. You often hear a correlation between experts in the video game industry who claim that violence in video games are somehow connected to the real world, and this is a time-old topic that keeps popping up in the news. But Nam, what's your take on this?
Just about the same as my take on anything when video games comes up in kind of a social justice type situation, is that it's just a scapegoat. I think there's more than enough evidence out there that there's no type of correlation between a person becoming violent from playing video games over time. In fact, if we go, and I think if you look these statistics up, and I don't know the exact numbers, but obviously with America, it's gun violence, and that's the one that keeps coming up and up and up and up and up, is gun violence and its relation to mass shootings and video games kind of provoking that thing, or provoking those people into becoming mass shooters. Which is absolutely 100% absurd, because if you look at countries like Japan, where video games are way more prevalent and in some cases way more violent, you will see that their incidents with mass shootings and stuff like that are actually lower than they are here in the States. So I think it would be a tad bit on the ridiculous side to deduce that video games are leading to all these things. I hate when people say the argument, well, I played Mario and I never jumped on a turtle. That's kind of dumbs down the argument in video games' favor. So I hate when people say that, but I feel like there's more than enough evidence out there statistically, and it's been proven over and over and over again, that there's no real bearing between virtual reality violence and violence in the real world. Microphone.
Yeah. You're 100% right, and I mean, honestly, I think, and I really hate to say it at this point, honestly, I think that this argument comes from activists really who are trying to find a way to push for gun control or push for video games to have stricter ratings and keep them, get rid of the violence of video games, because
it's agenda ridden.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, I'm not gonna go down to the whole spill on my stance with gun control, but they are. I kind of find the two linked in some ways to push that narrative a little bit.
Well, that's definitely one particular political party's agenda when they're mentioning video games. They're obviously trying to protect that, and there's other agendas out there too that they push this video game theory on us. I just think at this point there's enough evidence out there for us to kind of say, all right, guys, it's not video games. Let's stop fucking talking about video games in this sort of regard.
Well, and I think it's like, I feel like any person who's actually influenced by video games it's a very, very small percentage, and they're very radical individuals, which, if it weren't video games, they probably would be influenced by something else. And the only way that I see video games actually making an influence on people is really small children, maybe, who are playing games that they shouldn't be playing. I mean, I'm talking like really small children, in a way that, oh, well, they see this person die, but hey, they come back to life, Like, they just get to start over, and they get to mess with weapons and kill people, but they come back to life, Things like that, I feel like I can see how that can cause issues with younger children, but I mean, like, super younger children. And it's not a very common thing at all. And usually children don't have access to the things that could, cause such an influence like that. But other than that, I mean, it's true. I feel like there's video games don't really influence the people that play them. in a way that would make them violent or act ill towards other people.
And just to piggyback off of that real quick, what she's saying with the small children, and if that is in fact the case, is that really the game's fault, or is that the parents' fault?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I'll just leave it at that.
You know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so true, and like I worked quite a few years in Walmart, so I got to deal with parents who would bring up games to the counter, and you tell the parent, hey, this game's rated mature. Well, what's it rated mature for? What does that mean? So again, parents need to educate themselves what the ESRB rating system is, and I feel like that that misunderstanding wouldn't be there. I mean, the game's obviously rated mature for a reason. It's kind of like the same reason you don't go out and take your kid to an R-rated movie. So
yeah. Exactly.
And I mean, I've had experiences where I've had parents be like, yeah, the game's not that bad, is it? Well, it's called Assassin's Creed. I mean, it's the name kind of, what do you do in the game? I said, well, it's the name kind of indicates you go around and assassinate people. But you can ride horses in it, right? My son says you can ride horses. Well, yeah, but that's not really the main reason of the game. Your kid's just
on your way to kill people.
Yeah,
On your way
up your
to
ass
kill
to get you to buy the game for them. So, responsibility, parents. It's a good thing to have. Anyone else got any additional thoughts on that, Joe? You got anything to say?
I'm kind of with Namdi and Scruncho. Kind of took my comments, so I'm gonna blame them. But I mean, you pretty much covered it. I guess all I can add is just that. No, I got nothing. I got nothing.
Alrighty, so next topic we got at hand here is how important is a good soundtrack in a video game? And Joe, this was something you and I were talking about a little while ago. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think because when you're making a video game, there's a lot of things that you have to cover. You cover the cinematics, the the gameplay. There's a lot of things that go into the artwork, the way the world looks, and everything. And I think music, it's probably one of the most important things, is because music kind of builds the world around you. You can't really have the same experience with certain games if the soundtrack isn't up to to speed, or that it complements the art in video games. One video game, for instance, I could just tell you straight up that where the music complements the game is games like Dark Souls. Dark Souls doesn't have a big narrative. You have a world, you're just put in, you're given like a narrative at the very beginning, then you're off. And most of the time, there is no music in the game, but when you play the boss, fight bosses, the music for the bosses usually reflect on what happened to the characters in that certain area, or it tells a story, a bigger story that kind of complements the environment. And I think games like that, or games like God of War that get pretty cinematic, or like Halo, they build this atmosphere for the game that kind of gives the game its identity. You really wouldn't know Halo you probably would know Halo for what it is, but everyone knows Halo for that, iconic chant of monks when you land on the Halo ring. We know for his soundtrack, and it's what builds that experience for the players, because everyone who's played Halo can always go back to like the original theme, or like the triumphant theme to the finales right at the end of the video game. It's so embedded into like all the gamers' minds. When you finish the game, you're stuck humming the songs because of how well it captured those moments, and how it plays on emotional moments as well, in like cinematics. So I think without music, you couldn't really have a game that that's as touching, or that has that, what do you call it, that extra touch, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That touch of art.
And I do feel that some modern video game tracks aren't, or some modern soundtracks aren't as good as some of the older ones. But, when we're talking, SNES, PlayStation era video games, pre-voice acting times, soundtracks meant a lot. because oftentimes it was that, like, take the iconic Final Fantasy VII scene where Aerith dies. That music comes
Oh,
in.
spoiler alert!
Well, hey,
Whoa.
you know what? Like I said, everybody knows it at this point. It's embedded into pop culture. But take that scene, for instance, and as soon as that music starts, you feel sad. There's no... Sure, you're watching it happen on screen, but there's no voice acting, there's no screaming, there's no one talking. But all of a sudden, you're just overridden by a feeling of sadness that prolongs through the longest boss fight in any video game ever. And it's, you know, it does, and just to go along with what Joe said, plays such a role in setting the atmosphere.
And
That was
going off
more
of
of a-
setting the atmosphere, sorry to cut you off there, Joe.
Do it.
But oh, was that Nom?
That was Nom, yeah.
Oh my gosh, your mouth, Joe's mouth moved, and I was like, oh, okay.
I have
well,
a toothpick.
guess- Yeah, now that I hear you, you sound like completely different. I don't know why I thought it was you. I guess I just saw your mouth move, and I was like, oh, Joe. Sorry, Nom, I didn't mean to cut you off. But oh gosh, now I lost my train of thought. Atmosphere. Okay, but atmosphere. Going off of atmosphere, like especially when you play a lot of horror games, a comment that I always like to I guess emphasize as far as like making your game better is adding some sort of suspenseful music when you know shit's about to get real. Like when shit's about to get real and you know whatever thing you have that's about to pop up is going to pop up. Music does a lot to really set, you know, like we were talking about, atmosphere, and really get you into feeling that fear that that game is supposed to cause you as far as playing a horror game.
Yeah, and I pretty much agree with everything you guys are saying. Like we talked about with graphics on the last podcast, adding sort of a feel and a style to the game. So does music, obviously. And I would argue that music can even play a part in storytelling. For instance, the iconic Lavender Town theme for the original generation of Pokemon games. As soon as you step foot into Lavender Town, you knew that there was something like not right. Like this is eerie, this is kind of spooky, like what's going on. It's doing a little bit of storytelling. It's doing a little bit of showing you, you know, what's to come. Another example would be if you play JRPGs, you often know that you have your battle theme, then you have your boss battle theme, and then maybe once or twice a game there's a separate boss battle theme, and you know when you get into that second boss battle theme, shit's about to go down. This isn't your normal boss, right? And so I think video music can add some sort of a storytelling element or add some emphasis on some story points to the game and kind of make the experience kind of complete it in a way. So I think it's very important that the soundtrack is on point. And I kind of wanted to ask you guys, maybe this is just a little too out of nowhere, but do you guys have like a favorite soundtrack, or do you when you hear soundtracks in video games, do you kind of have a game in mind that you like specifically for that?
For me, it's always been Chrono Cross. I mean, you know, Trigger was great as well, but Yasunori Mitsuda, he's such a good composer, and just his work in general. Xenogears is another one, but Chrono Cross has really always stood out to me. And the main reason why Chrono Cross's opening scene, like when you go to the start menu, you see that Time Scar starts to play. It just sets up the stage for everything you're going to experience from that game. And I mean, what about you, Joe? Your favorite soundtrack in the game?
I have to think about it. I was going to say, Abby, you can go.
I mean, y'all might see this coming, but World of Warcraft has some kick-ass music. I mean, I don't know if you would consider that a collective soundtrack since they're always adding things on because they're still going, but I mean, that music is so good. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to it, or I don't know. Some people turn their music off when they play games. I have a really good friend that does that. It drives me nuts. it drives me nuts. I'm like, why? You have to listen. Like, come on. But World of Warcraft has some amazing music. I grew up playing music basically my whole life, and I remember I got this flute book because I play flute of World of Warcraft music, and I used to sit there and I used to play it, and I thought I was like, wow, this is so cool. But I got such a kick out of it, and that's how much I genuinely love this soundtrack. Also, Doom, because I'm super into metal. Doom has a kick-ass soundtrack. I mean, just super cool, super pumpy-uppy, and just badass. But yeah, that's my suggestions.
I think if I had to pick a modern soundtrack I really enjoyed in recent years over all others, oh damn, there's three that really stand out to me. Okay, I'm actually going to toss in four. Nier Automata, the original Nier, even though that's more of a 2011. Both of those have really great soundtracks. Last year, hands down, Persona 5 was... I still love that soundtrack today. But one I think that a lot of people talk about, and a lot of people say it's overrated, I couldn't disagree more, is Undertale.
I'm saying that's overrated.
There's a lot of people who do. Oh,
What?
that music's so overrated.
People just, you know what? Not to get off topic here, but I think Undertale's fan base gives Undertale a bad name, because I think a lot of people look at Undertale's fan base and get annoyed with it, and then they extrapolate that to the game. But Undertale's awesome. The whole thing, music, everything. So
I haven't played it yet.
You need to.
It's a good game. But,
I'll get to it eventually.
Those are, and even to some extent too, I feel like music can almost make a game feel different in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm working on a video right now with Wild Arms. Nom, Joe, you might know, maybe even you, Abby, might know what that game is, but it's a Japanese RPG that has a lot of Western Wild West influences to it. And as great as the games are, I can't help but wonder if that game would have been as charming had its soundtrack not have been so good. I think it kind of set the stage and separated it just from its musical composition apart from any other game at the time.
Yeah. No, yeah, I've heard some of the soundtrack from it. It's actually really good. Me personally, when it comes to like the games and music is like it's one of those things that like it really drives me to play the game more. There's a lot of scenes like really, if you took certain music out of it, or if a game doesn't have a good composer, most of the games that we know and love probably wouldn't be around. Well, they would be around, but they wouldn't be as embedded, like I was saying earlier, into the memories of people or players. Some of my favorite soundtracks, Halo 2 was like one of my favorites. You totally see the composer. He just builds right off of the first one, adding some nice metal guitar riffs, building on the emotion, and it kind of fits like tones for games, like because that's one of the most important things. Like you could have is music, because you could have a game that has a dark story or like a story that's supposed to mean something, and if you don't have a soundtrack to complement it, it could totally throw off the tone of the movie, or not the movie or the game. Movies too, but if you had like, think of what would happen if you mixed up soundtracks with other games. Soundtracks that probably weren't made for the game. If you added the Uncharted theme to something like Doom, your perception of Doom would totally be off, because here's something that's really really Indiana Jones like, and you're playing something about killing demons on Mars. It does not, like, in your mind, you I guess when the title screen pops up and you hear that awesome Uncharted theme plays, you could think you're going on an adventure, but you're not going to get that feeling of like, I'm in hell or I'm in Mars, I'm about to kill some demons, I'm about to rip them apart. It ruins that kind of experience. And I think overall that would kind of play into the review scores for the games, because there are some games out there that their soundtrack just does not mix with the game. It just doesn't. I can't think of any examples other than I had one in my mind, but I lost it. Like I said, we're tired, but or The Last of Us, that that theme with the guitar or the mandolin, whatever they were playing. I don't remember the exact instrument. It was just one instrument for the entire game. And it created such an atmosphere for the game that if you put it in any other action like Call of Duty or something, you're not going to get that same tone. And it's really important that the music, or that the composers, when they make the music, that it complements the game. I just think it can make or break the experience.
You know, going along with video game soundtracks too, I feel like just sound design in general plays such a unique role, and I think sound design is something we take for granted. Each and every one of those sound effects that we hear in the video game, somebody has to go out and record those, find something in the environment that sounds like it to add to it. And, you know, without the sound effects, you know, even something as simple as a gun firing or footsteps sometimes can be so, you know, it can add to that experience. You know, it's missing that. You can feel it.
So none of y'all want to mention Uematsu? No one.
We were saving that
I haven't
for you,
heard.
Mom.
Okay, so what? Final Fantasy 1 through 10? He was on, right?
Yeah,
1 through
he
10?
helped with number 10. I think the other guy, I can't remember, some other dude helped with 10 as well.
And Chrono Trigger he helped with too. I don't know if he did anything with Chrono Cross.
Actually, fun fact, Chrono Trigger, he just, Mitsuda had all the compositions composed. He just couldn't get the rest of the compositions because he had to leave for medical reasons. So it was Uematsu who took his notes, his soundtracks, and kind of composed the rest of those.
No one said Mega Man. No one said Mega Man.
I was thinking of mentioning Mega Man because without really he's known as Rockman, and most of their songs, they are taken from like 70s, late 70s, early 80s bands. I can't remember the name of the songs, but Bomb Man's Stage was one of them. Even Sonic the Hedgehog 3, we have Michael Jackson, he helped with that.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with that.
And then X took it to a whole new level because the Mega.
Is one of my favorites.
The first X had a ridiculous soundtrack. Street Fighter 2 had some of the most iconic music in it, especially if we're talking about Ken's theme and Guile's theme.
All right.
Those are just a couple of mine.
You want an interesting fact about Street Fighter and about the Street Fighter composer? Yoko Shimomura also does the work for Kingdom Hearts, Super Mario RPG, and Final Fantasy 15. But yet you listen to those styles, you wouldn't be able to tell that.
You know what has an underrated soundtrack, and it's going to be funny when I say this, is Zelda. And I know what everyone's thinking, that's not underrated at all. But the only song we ever hear from Zelda is the Hyrule theme. But Zelda has a plenty of other songs in its library that are awesome, like the Forest theme and the Dark World theme and A Link to the Past. They're all good music. I think actually A Link to the Past probably has my favorite Zelda soundtrack in it.
I like Banjo-Kazooie's soundtrack as well.
I do want to mention one game that I did stop playing and I never finished because of its soundtrack. I couldn't stand it. That was Final Fantasy X-2. The title screen has probably one of the best title openings or title music for it, but playing through the game with that kind of music and that kind of tone, that was a game I was thinking of. A game that breaks the tone with their music. I couldn't finish that game. You had such an upbeat and cheery soundtrack for a story that was kind of meant to be a little darker. I mean, I get there was some funny moments or Japanese humor moments. I don't know what kind of humor that was. It was real cringy humor, but it stuff like that game, I don't think the soundtrack really fit well with it. So I never finished it. I couldn't. It's a weird confession.
And Guilty Gear.
Interesting.
Guilty Gear.
I remember Guilty Gear.
Soundtrack.
Can't go wrong with a metal soundtrack.
No.
Soul Calibur had a good soundtrack too.
Yeah.
We're talking about Guilty Gear.
Yeah. I find this all interesting because here I'm sitting here, all my favorite soundtracks have a more classical kind of sound to them. You know, and it's interesting just to see everybody's perspective on what they think makes a good soundtrack because we all have different tastes in music.
Well, Abby brought up
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, and I actually forgot about that one too.
So good.
Action Veil, or anything elf related in World of Warcraft
Yes.
is amazing. And the entire soundtrack for The Lich King was incredible. And,
Yeah.
and the music that actually played in Icecrown Citadel really, really captured what that was supposed to be. So I just wanted to throw
Well,
that.
even the intro screen, the duh 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 duh, it's just like oh yeah, okay, I'm logging in.
That's that's so well ingrained in my memory that like I can hear it and like it automatically triggers feelings of playing the game.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even mind waiting in line, getting on servers sometimes because I could sit there and I could listen to the music. And I actually remember having to type in my password every single time before there was BattleNet, and I just I actually didn't appreciate that as much as I should have, because I got to listen to that little smidget of the intro title screen music. And you don't get that anymore, because when you log into WoW or Overwatch or whatever now, you're logged into your BattleNet, so you instantly just go in, and you don't really get that intro music anymore, which is kind of unfortunate.
Position in queue 3,300 average wait time 1 hour, and then you would hear that. I can hear it. I'm not gonna be able to mimic it, but that login sound effect, that dong, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I can hear that in my head too. Like when you actually get logged in, it'll go dong. And
You know what game has a vastly underrated soundtrack? Parasite Eve.
Crisis Core.
Oh my gosh,
Parasite.
guys! Oh my! Whoa!
Top
We didn't
hold
even
up.
mention this one. How could we have not mentioned this one? Skyrim. Skyrim has an amazing.
I was thinking about that right now, but I'm like,
soundtrack.
we're gonna.
That was the one that was on the tip of my tongue. I was like, damn, I know which one this is. What is it? I know there's one that I really enjoy too. What is it? Skyrim.
Elder Scrolls.
Ah, so good.
The reason that thing was so good, this is something I really appreciate. There are a lot of games that have they stick with the same theme. You can look at Halo; they stuck with the same theme. They changed it a little bit here and there, but overall it's the same. Halo Reach had a little different rendition of the hum. Uncharted, basically the same thing. They just add more horns. I think like 10 more horns for each game that comes out. But Skyrim, the reason one of the main reasons I fell in love with that game, I'll never forget. I was always wondering, like, why are people talking about this game? This game it looks like it's going to be overrated. I saw the trailer, and the music is one of the things that drew me in. Then when that start screen, it slowly builds up the music, but it's the original theme. So it's the Elder Scrolls theme, but a different rendition, but it sounds so different.
Yeah. Something's going on.
we lost. He was in the middle of a great point too.
I know, and then he's just like, damn it.
You didn't mute your mic again, did you?
Did you unplug it? Is it plugged in?
Yeah,
He
it
got it.
died. Like, what the heck? Alright.
Uh,
Where was I? I said Skyrim something. No, it just tells you that what kind of world you're going to get introduced to. You know, you hear the Vikings, kind of that Viking, thump, the drums and everything. It lets you know that it's going to be like a barbaric world that you enter. And yeah, sure enough, you enter that barbaric world. And let me just tell you that the entire time, like I didn't know about fast travel until I was about 93 hours in. And I didn't mind. Like, I was walking everywhere for 93 hours. I didn't know anything about fast travel. So...
what the hell?
Yeah, I know. I didn't know fast. Yeah, 93 hours. I'll never
Another
forget.
confession.
Yeah, that's weird. But like, I remember telling me and my friend Alex, we'd always play the game. We'd sit in a party and talk about what we were doing, and I'll never forget. I was like 93 hours in, and I was just like, dude, this soundtrack is so awesome that makes it. I don't even care if I have to walk everywhere, and I'll never forget. He was just like, what do you mean walk everywhere? I'm like, yeah, like it's cool walking across the land, but just having to listen to the soundtrack, I don't even care. And he says, you've been walking everywhere this entire time. I said, that's the game, isn't it? Like, it's like, no, you can fast travel. And sure enough, yeah, I opened my map and just fast travel, and I was just like,
How do you feel about Octopath Traveler's soundtrack?
let me just tell you that from the very first moment of Octopath Traveler, when the demo was released, I fell in love with that soundtrack. That soundtrack to me is like, I think it's one of the best, especially like, I don't know why, it just reminds me so much. It's so nostalgic. Even though it's a new soundtrack, it just feels so nostalgic, and it just hits all the right.
Yeah,
I get that too.
It's already having a cultural impact. Like, there's a few YouTubers that I follow. We were talking about them earlier, Nom, that have started dropping covers of Octopath Traveler games or the songs already. So, I mean, it's almost like Persona 5 and Nier Automata from last year all over again. But does anybody have anything else we want to add to this topic, or?
Shaq Fu has the best soundtrack ever.
We just spent about 30 minutes talking about gaming soundtracks.
Beat it to death.
All right. So our next topic we have up here is what makes a gamer. You hear that time old thing, everyone say, oh, a gamer, someone who plays games hardcore, they're into playing the hardest difficulties and beating every game that there is, or, them people who play Candy Crush, they're not gamers. So it kind of opens a spectrum. What's considered a gamer and what's not? Joe, you had some thoughts on this, or we had some thoughts on this and stuff. Do you have anything you kind of want to add to that?
There's a lot that you could really talk or you kind of explore in this topic, but I guess a lot of people, they'll look at a simple, someone who only plays one game and they don't even call him a gamer, or like someone who just casually plays. I'm not one of those people that would just go out and say like, oh, you're not a gamer because you don't play these types of games or whatever. If you play video games, if you enjoy playing video games, then screw it. You're a gamer. Might not be a hardcore gamer or anything, but in the end of the day, if you enjoy playing the video games or you enjoy playing what you're playing or whatever, I consider you a gamer.
See, and I kind of have a different perspective on that. I don't consider those grandmas that you see sitting in the car playing Candy Crush a gamer. To me,
oh, okay. We're going to talk about mobiles.
Phone,
okay, never mind.
We talked about that last talk show. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole again. But to some extent, I think that there are things. It's like, okay, you know what? Because you play Candy Crush, that doesn't just make you a gamer. And I might get a lot of hate for saying that, but it's the way that I feel.
I mean, I don't disagree with you, though, because here's the difference. You have a phone and you download an app, but that phone isn't meant for gaming. And this is the difference between people who buy consoles and they buy consoles to play games on them. Even if it is just one game, they're still buying that console to play that game. But these people who download these apps, that phone isn't meant for these games. So I don't really consider those people gamers. And if you want to talk about people who only play one game, well, there's definitely, like, different levels of gaming. I mean, I can definitely sit here and say that there are people who are more of a gamer than these people who only play one game. Like, all these people who only play Fortnite. I know a hell of a ton of more people who are more of gamers who play more games. I think there's different levels, but does it make these people who play Fortnite not gamers? I mean, no, but there are different levels in my opinion.
All right, so we got to establish the levels, guys. We're going to start with level 1.
Okay, so there's three levels. Big, healthy, husky, fluffy, and no, just kidding.
Well, no, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, no, the mobile phones, I didn't think we were going in that direction. Mobile phone games, like, when I see people download mobile phone games, It's not. It's not. I'm not like saying that's taboo or anything. We all download games on our phones, but like simple games just to pass the time. You're waiting at the DMV.
Yeah.
Screw it. I'm gonna play like, Bubble Popper or something, Solitaire or something.
Doodle Jump.
Um,
That was my go-to.
I don't know what that is.
What?
Yeah,
Come
I don't know
on,
what that is.
guys. Get with it.
I had a Nokia though with a snake game.
Okay.
was legit.
All right.
That- That's a real gamer right there. Um, those people I don't really consider gamers. They're more of people who just trying to pass the time. You know what? Hold up, Nam. You want to take this? I feel like you have something to say. I'm losing my thoughts right now.
Well, I feel like if you have a vested interest in gaming, you're a gamer. So somebody who, like you guys are saying, would just play a mobile game here and there, or Farmville on Facebook or something along those lines. I don't
That
think
even
that
exist.
I wouldn't call them gamers. If they would have called themselves gamers, I honestly don't give a shit. It's one of those things like we talked about last time about what is a game and what's not a game. It's one of those things that I really don't give a fuck if you want to call yourself a gamer. That's fine by me. My personal opinion is that you have to have some sort of interest in gaming or the gaming community to actually be a gamer.
Mhm.
You could be somebody who every now and again, goes down to the local tennis court and plays tennis. Maybe once a month. Are you a tennis player then? Or you just play tennis sometimes?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. That's at least the way I view it. For the longest time, and I'm like a period of pretty much the last generation of console, through that whole console life cycle, I was strictly stuck to World of Warcraft, and World of Warcraft was the only game I played. And at that point in time, I remember thinking to myself, am I still a gamer? Because all I do is play World of Warcraft. And I remember thinking to myself, no, not really. I just play World of Warcraft. And so I kind of agree with Scruncho there when she says, the people that come out and they just play Fortnite, and maybe nothing else, or they're like, they're just there for Twitch views or whatever. That's shaky ground. I don't really think that they should consider themselves gamers, even though I really don't give a fuck if they do.
Yeah, there's a whole area you could explore on that. I mean, there's, like you said, there's different levels of gamers. There could be like those.
Yeah.
There's gamers that study the game. You have competitive gamers. There's one. Those are people who probably stick to like maybe 2 to 3 games, I would say, but they study those games to where they perfect them, and eventually, I mean, to a lot of people, I mean, it becomes a job, pretty much. At that point, I don't know if you could. I mean, you are still a gamer, kind of, but it's just like, I don't know if those people get worn out over doing that. Eventually, I'm pretty sure that someone would hate the game if they keep on playing it unless they're in love with it. Because there are some people who still play, like fighting games or shooting games. I'm not going to say Call of Duty, but, like old school Halo or, something that was real strategic. And they study like all the little aspects of the game where they are that hardcore competitive gamer for a specific game. So you have the competitive gamers, and I would say like the hardcore gamers would probably be someone who invests a lot of time into, I don't know. Someone want to build off of that? I'm going to just leave it right there.
I guess get what you're going with. A hardcore gamer, I'd say someone who spends a lot of time, a lot of their free time goes into playing video games. They're or whenever they have a moment to play video games, they're going to, play them. Life gets in the way, let's face it. You have family, things like that. So, I think that kind of means, you have a dedicated interest into playing games, kind of seeing the spectrum, and you're not stuck to one gamer. And then I think if we're going to categorize them, I'd say the people who are strictly play Call of Duty games, or strictly play Fortnite, or catch that yearly release of the new Call of Duty game and only play those games. I think we could kind of contend them into more of a casual gamer. And then the mobile games, the ones your grandma plays while she's sitting in the DMV waiting, you know, those we're just gonna call past the time gamers.
Then there's the tabletop gamers, who are the true gamers.
The original gamers, okay? The
OG.
original gamers.
Anyone got anything else to add to that topic?
No, Scruncho hates
Man
Fortnite.
and Conquer.
Nah,
What?
we all hate we all hate Fortnite.
We all hate Fortnite.
There's some
Man
Fortnite
and Conquer is now a
in the
mobile
dislike
game.
button right now.
That's all good.
And
You
I mean,
guys
there's a lot of people who dislike the games that I dislike, but you know, you don't see me hating on their videos, so
Yeah.
Make sure you put Fortnite sucks in the tag or in the title
You know
somewhere.
what? I'm gonna
I want to do that.
All right. So moving on about how terrible Fortnite is. What?
Well, you guys want to talk about Fortnite? We can talk about why Fortnite sucks.
No.
I don't want to talk about Fortnite anymore.
No. So this is a topic I think was kind of very interesting to talk about, and this is, do we need annual releases for games? And when we're talking annual releases, we're talking about games like Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed or insert an EA game here where they have where every year they try to come out with a new entry in this game. You know, Activision's Black Ops 4 coming out this year. You know, last year we had World War II. 3 different teams working on it. Is there really a point in making annual release games? I mean, even if we go down the sports titles in of themselves, it's the same damn game every year, especially when it comes to a sports game. So, is it necessary to have an annual release?
Nope.
Any other additional thoughts on that, Nog?
No, but I mean, especially if we're talking about the sports game, we need maybe one of each sport, maybe like every console life cycle, in my opinion. Because if you get into where you're playing Madden 10 and Madden 11, Madden 12, Madden whatever, it's the same thing with updated rosters, which you could do now without having to buy a whole entire different game, and maybe they try something new mechanically, maybe one small thing here, one small thing there, but it's essentially the same game over and over and over again. And what I tend to find with these particular games is that they're usually released extremely buggy, and it just seems like the development life cycle is not nearly long enough, and there's a lot of pressure on these developers to just push something out to the point where it's like, what's the fucking point here? Maybe it's a little different with the Assassin's Creed games because I've played maybe 2,
Oh my goodness.
but
All right.
games like that might be a little different. And Call of Duty I stay away from completely, so I can't do that at all.
I've had a lot of friends who have been invested into the Assassin's Creed games, and I would make an argument. I absolutely flat out hated the first Assassin's Creed game. I thought that game was just repetitive as shit. Got tired of it. I rushed myself through the end of that game because I wanted to see the conclusion of the story. In turn, I never picked up Assassin's Creed 2, but I know a lot of my friends really consider Assassin's Creed 2 the pinnacle of the series. And I think it was at that point Ubisoft lost their way. The quality of those games slowly started to diminish with each entry. I mean, then you had Brotherhood, Revelations, Assassin's Creed 3, then you had, all these other games, and oh, frick, what was it, Joe? What entry was it? Unity and Rogue that came out roughly around the same time?
It was Syndicate and Rogue.
Yeah, that's what it was.
No,
Syndicate
it was.
and
It
Rogue.
was Unity and Rogue. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's like 27 entries in the Assassin's Creed series already.
And even if I wanted to get into the series at this point, it's like, well, where do I start? So, annual releases, I feel like they take away from the quality of a game. I think it's also a great way for people to get burnt out on these particular types of games. I mean, do we really need 50 Assassin's Creed titles? I mean, Rockstar still keeping Grand Theft Auto 5 alive. They haven't made Grand Theft Auto 6 yet. So,
I don't know. What do you think, Happy?
I mean, you got to think about a series that is a series and super successful compared to a series that does annual releases and is kind of And a good example of this is Fallout. What if they released a new Fallout game every single year? Imagine how many people would not like Fallout as much if they released a new Fallout game every single year. You know, that's something that you sit here and you think about, oh, well, if this were the case, wow, how different, things would be.
Well, if Bethesda were to release a Fallout game every year, I'm pretty sure our computers and consoles would just blow up by the amount of glitches they have in their games.
Yeah.
The people that are waiting for Elder Scrolls 6 are screaming right now. We would love an annual release at this point in time.
I feel like the old saying, quality over quantity. And that's the way that I feel.
As long as you're not Duke Nukem
things,
forever.
though,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and as long as you don't tease it at the end of your E3 conference as a little title screen, like, all right, that's the end of it. Bye, guys.
It's funny because I was thinking, and I don't know how we keep getting back to World of Warcraft, maybe because there's an expansion on the horizon. But I remember at one point Blizzard saying that it was a goal of theirs to have an annual expansion release, and I remember reading that and just cringing inside, going, "Oh my god, these are going to go to shit real fast if we start getting an annual release on expansions."
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think they released them a little too fast as is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
I'll say something here because I have an interesting perspective on this. Actually being a writer myself, investing time into creating my own narratives. I mean, and some people do it better than others, but I feel like a story and characters, they need time to grow. They need time to be able to develop. And when you're put on a strict release schedule, you got to get this out as quick as you can. I do think sometimes these stories suffer. There's a lot of content that doesn't make it in to these games. I mean, you can equate that to what I'm kind of saying with writing here, but a lot of concepts that these people may have for a story don't make it in the final cut because they're like, we need that for that annual release. Just cut it, drop it, and there you go. One of my earlier videos I actually talked about with Square Enix and Xenogears having that issue. The Tetsuya Takahashi was talking about how Square Enix back then, they had a 2-year development cycle to finish up a game. They weren't able to get it finished up, meet that deadline to pump out that title. So what they do, they ended up rushing the game, the second half of the disc being nothing but a narrative-driven story. And you could say the game suffered from that, but yet at the same time, they did what they thought was necessary to get the game complete as well. So
yeah, you have to wonder kind of what that does to the passion of the developers too, especially when you're going, okay, here's the release date, here's the launch, there it goes, all right, on to the next one. It's got to become sort of mechanical to them, and at some point, I would think you would lose yourself in working instead of doing the thing that you love. You know what I mean? So, and that has to have some sort of effect on the game that is being produced as well.
And I think that's why all eyes are on CD Projekt Red right now, because those developers are very much, we're not going to release this game until it's finished, until we feel like we've got a product that's quality. It is, we know gamers are going to look at this game and go, damn, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Take your time, devs.
Yeah. Yeah. And as for the people who bitch about games getting delayed, shut your frickin' pie hole and just let them work on it. Shigeru Miyamoto said a broken game at release is always broken. A finished game has a chance of being good or something like that. So
All right. Well, now we come to the question: like, are we saying that these games are are they bad games? Let's scratch out EA's. No, we can't really. But like, do these games how would I put it? I lost my thought, man.
so
I get what you're
I
trying to
lost
say.
my
but
thought.
Yeah, are
Am
they
I,
technically
like,
bad games?
are
even
these
if they
technically
are
bad games?
released
Yeah.
annually?
Well, as
Yeah,
far
so I
as
finished my
I'm
sentence.
gonna say I've played at friends' houses the World War II Call of Duty, and I actually didn't think that game was terrible, and I thought the zombie feature was actually pretty cool. Do I think it could have been better had it not been annual? Yeah, of course, but that's any game, you know. The longer you work on it, the more I guess product you're going to get from it in a positive way rather than I guess such a straightforward way, if that makes sense.
And as far as the EA and the sports, the MLBs, the NBA 2Ks, and FIFA and Madden games like that, they're not bad games. They're just pointless. Like if you have Madden 18, you don't need Madden 19. You're not going to need Madden 20. You're not going to need Madden 21 probably. They're
Yeah.
just pointless.
You know, and this is what it comes. I guess this is what frustrates me about annual releases. Let's go back to Assassin's Creed yet again, because I feel like this is a really great one to use as an example. But it's Burnout. And as a potential buyer, you just take a look at it and you're like, come on, Ubisoft, you have a slew of ideas, creative members in your team who could create a brand new, expansive, open world game. You guys clearly, have built a series upon doing that. Let a group of passionate, dedicated developers take that and create something new. At this point, it's like, we know the premise of Assassin's Creed. Why not go back and do something a bit different? And I think that's kind of my beef with it, is you see squandered potential by forcing developers into making a game in a specific series rather than letting them create maybe a game that they want to try that's very different. Prince of Persia, if you haven't had a release in that, Ubisoft, maybe you could get on that, Does anybody have any other additional thoughts on that?
We'll talk about it in a year.
Yeah. All right. So we'll make it an annual schedule to talk about annual games at least once a year.
So that new Call of Duty.
Yeah. So just real quickly before we move on, because we did mention EA here, did you guys see that tweet that I sent you earlier? About the dude who spent $10,000 in FIFA over the course of, or no, it was $17,000 in FIFA over the course of 2 years.
I did not. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, just...
Well, let's start naming the things that you could buy with $17,000.
A car.
A car.
A down
Car.
payment on a house.
There's a lot of things. You could open up a restaurant or your own little stand, specifically. There's a lot of things that you could have done with that. But I mean, this is not the first time we've seen it.
No.
Recently, I don't know. It was like maybe a few months ago or late last year. Someone had to they took out the microtransactions because someone was spending too much money on microtransactions.
Was that a mobile game that did that?
Was it a mobile game?
Was.
I'm not sure,
No, I
but they
think it
took out their
was- I
microtransactions.
think it was Warframe. Someone had found an exploit.
Yeah,
where
it
they were
was.
constantly spending way too much money, and the developer was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! That was not our intention with there. We're going to take that out."
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's sad to see, but I mean, like, it's starting to become an addiction.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, I don't see how people can get addicted to it, but I mean, it happens.
You know what's really...
I mean-
Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
I don't know. I'm trying to work against my mind right now, guys. Save me.
well, honestly, what's really scary about that is how do you spend 17,000 and not have everything already? Like he's still spending money on it.
Well, what was even more interesting about that particular thing is the guy had actually, just out of curiosity, requested to EA, I guess because during some new law in Europe or whatever, it actually requires these companies to keep a record of everything that they spend. So if someone wants to get that, they kind of can. But what was interesting is EA was reluctant to release. They didn't want to release the content of each and every single one of these loot boxes that he opened and what he got inside of the loot boxes. They only showed, oh, well, you spent this amount of money on this loot box to purchase this loot box to open it up. They only kept track of the transactions, not actually the content inside. So, what's EA got to hide?
A lot.
But, I mean, I guess we're going down a road and bringing up microtransactions again. Just in general, I feel like completely removing the equation out of how they're actually destroying great games, taking that argument outside, I feel like it is entering a territory of unhealthy, making an unhealthy environment for gamers, because much like going to a casino, there's a reason casinos have that gambling label at it. There's people who get addicted to buying all these different microtransactions, and more so loot boxes, that how many more people are harming their family, ruining their personal lives because of it. And these are available to our children. Our children are able to play these games. It's kind of scary to think about. But I don't know. That's a whole different rabbit hole for another day, I think. Any other additional thoughts on that?
Nope.
Alrighty. And, well, last topic for the night here we've got things we hate about the video game industry. This is a topic we could probably talk quite a while on, but
I got two.
Okay.
Microtransactions and annual releases.
I was about to say that.
Rushed games,
Day one DLC.
early access
DLC.
games that don't clearly make themselves
that
presented
are
enough.
actually like demos.
Yeah.
There's so many early
I'll
access
tell
games
you
out there right
one
now.
thing that I hate, and I don't know if this has to do with the video game industry directly. I have no idea where this comes from. I'm not an expert on it, but video gaming merch. If I see another Five Nights at Freddy's thing in any one of the stores that I go to, I'm gonna go crazy. Like, I cannot stand when games have so much merch that you wipe your butt and, oh my gosh, oh, another Five Nights at Freddy's merch. Oh, it's there too. Like, it's everywhere. I mean, oh my gosh. It's just
it's like Angry
and
Birds.
I don't get me wrong, I don't dislike Five Nights at Freddy's, but oh my gosh, so much merch, and it's everywhere. It's at freaking Walmart, for fuck's sake. I mean, it's just everywhere, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the actual gaming company that makes the game. I have no idea how that works, but it is annoying when everywhere you turn there's something involving this certain game. It's just like, oh my gosh.
It's like GameStop.
Stop it.
Could be worse.
Walk in, I see 5 Pikachu plushies. It's like, where's Gengar?
I thought she was going to say Fortnite, to be honest with you.
Oh my gosh, I'm done
Have you
talking
seen the
about
t-shirts?
Fortnite.
Have you seen the dances? Like, they're everywhere.
You know what annoys me is when a video game trailer shows no video game gameplay. Dishonored 2. Did you ever see the Dishonored trailer that they played on television over and over and over again? If you knew nothing about that, you would go, "What?" Like halfway, the whole way through the trailer, you're like, "Wait, is this a game or is this like a movie? Like, what's going on here?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, live action gameplays can be pretty frustrating. No, in all honesty, you know what the hell bugs me more than anything in video games right now? We can cut this whole portion out if you guys don't feel comfortable talking about it. But the frickin' feminists in video games, man, just they're everywhere.
That's true.
And it's absolutely frustrating.
Just recently.
Here's my thing, because I've done videos on this several times. I hate using the word feminist because the way the word feminist gets used now is completely inaccurate, and a lot of what people see is like the label feminist, and automatically assume that this is like this fundamentalist version of a feminist where, you know, like we're super male penis hating, you know, women out there. That's not what feminism was. It's not what feminism was meant to be. Feminism is simply just essentially for equal rights. That's what feminism is. But somewhere along the line, the definition got changed, and now when people even say feminist, you kind of cringe, even though feminism is a good thing. But I know what you're talking about, specifically with like Anita Sarkeesian and people like that you're referring to, who somehow think that an art style or an artist's creative vision somehow destroys female empowerment. You know, because a video game character has big boobs or something like that. That stuff gives me a headache to even talk about, because there's much more important issues when it comes to sexism and stuff out there and inequalities in the world, because those are things that do exist in the world. They do exist in high levels in the world. And to be focused on a video game character's physique or something like that is just, to me, it's killing your own argument. It's just killing it. So I guess that's just my 2 cents on it.
I think what really started it for me was, I have nothing against female characters in games. I'm completely fine with that. As a matter of fact, some of my favorite video game characters are women. But have you guys noticed there's a lot more emphasis on female characters in games nowadays? Like, it's more of a self-conscious effort. Like, I was looking at Steam the other day, and it had a tag that said female protagonist.
That's what I was going to say. That's something that bugs the crap out of me, is when they label a game as female protagonist. Why does it matter if they're male or female? You know, it doesn't matter. I don't know why it has to be an official tag on Steam. So you're telling me that you're not going to play a game just because it doesn't have a female protagonist, you know? Or you're more likely to play a game because it does have a female protagonist? I mean, that kind of bugs me, because, you know, it's a game. I don't know. I've never liked that. I've never liked that.
It's the same thing with the tag girl gamer. Gamer girl.
Exactly.
I hate that. I hate that.
Exactly. Oh
Have you ever been like...
Totally forgot about that.
It drives me up a wall. Just say you're a gamer. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're female or not.
That bugs me. It bugs me so much. And especially because, you know, I am a girl gamer, but I would never be like, #girlgamer. It's like, who cares? You're a gamer. Whatever. Who cares? You know, like, I play games. You play games. He plays games. She plays games. You know, who cares? We're all gamers. You know, I don't see you guys like going #guy gamer, you know? It's just, at that point, you gotta wonder.
You'd get if you started a #guy gamer. I mean, let's just
guy gamer. Can you guys please do that in your tweets from now on?
And then all you did was play mobile games?
But
well, like this is what's really grinding my gears. It's all of that, and the emphasis, I guess, that like you said, Abby, it shouldn't matter if it's a chick you're playing as a chick or not.
It shouldn't.
It's really drawing away from the craft that these developers they're making these games for the wrong reason. It's if you're going in there like just saying like I have to make this game where it has to be a female protagonist or we need a man protagonist for this one, like no, you don't do that. You create a world, you're creating something. People are there to play it. We're not here to sit here and like get all politically correct and just say like, oh well, I'm glad I'm playing a game that has a girl protagonist or whatever. If anything, if you're going in the mindset or going in the gaming industry or making a game with that kind of mindset, I think you're doing completely wrong. It's not about that.
Because at that point, you're shaping your ideas around something, and you shouldn't have to shape your ideas around something just to make it look better to certain people, if that makes sense.
I mean, and I guess it's SJWs plastered everywhere that's really bugging me in the video game culture because they're having such an impact on it. I mean, one of the things that drove me bonkers about what one of the critics asked during the panel with CD Projekt Red, are you going to be able to have some same-sex relationships? Out of all the questions you could ask, you had to ask that. And frankly, it's an RPG. If they're going to let you bang other characters, they're probably going to have same-sex relationships in there. But it's just the fact, I guess, that out of all the other questions they could ask, it was that one. I'm not.
No, you're right. It's they are having an effect, and it's just like with Overwatch. Like Zarya was a completely forced character. They made Zarya to appease people who were saying, "Well, you only have female body types like this represented in this game, or there's too many female characters that look like sexy." Or something like that. And I think Blizzard did a really good job of not making Zarya feel like she was a forced character, because I think she is a good character. But they're definitely having an effect out there. And this whole topic, just go ahead. It's going to get me upset.
It grinds our gears. That is the point, guys.
I mean, and
really chafes my cheeks.
you know,
Where do you come up with this stuff, Abby? Like, what the hell?
My head.
like I don't want to sit there and make it sound like we're against all of this stuff being in games, that we're against female protagonists, that we're against same-sex things. I don't care. When I do care is when it takes away from the game, or when it feels so forced that you're like, ugh. The writing's bad because of it.
I think the most two recent examples that everybody was talking about and that everybody was fighting about, and I was just staying out of it because I was just like, I just don't care enough, but like Battlefield with the woman on the cover, and then the same-sex couple, I think it was in the second part of The Last of Us. I could be.
Yeah.
Was it that one?
No,
yeah, I remember everybody was talking about that, and I was just like, "Who cares? Whatever." It's just, it's just the fact that people are just arguing about it.
My beef with the Last of Us trailer was intentionally shown at E3 on the stage to get people talking about that game, and I think Neil Druckmann, the creator of that game, knew that if he could insert that, critics or Polygon, Kotaku, websites like that would gravitate towards that, and that would be the highlight of what was talking about E3. Because after, to hell with the fact that Elder Scrolls 6 was announced, did you hear about that Last of Us scene? And in all honesty, that scene kind of felt natural to me anyways. It didn't feel like it was overly forced. I didn't have a problem with it, but I sure as hell had a problem with the critics talking about that 2, 3, 4 weeks after E3 was over.
I know it's not the actual things like that ruin them. It's the people that ruin them that are like, oh, I can't believe they did that, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my gosh, what century are you living in? I don't understand.
But anything else in the video game industry that grinds our gears that we feel is worth mentioning?
Box art for video games that suck.
Yeah. Actually, you know what?
They're all the same.
The lack of a manual. What was it the other day? It was a game. I think it was East 8 that someone unboxed, and it actually come with the paper manual. It's like, whoa, what the hell?
What's that? What's a paper manual?
Oh,
I haven't heard that since
story,
Nom.
child.
Haven't heard of that since Nom, back in the war.
Just think that we are probably the last generation to see a paper manual, and we're the ones that are going to tell our kids,
Stop.
like,
My heart,
so
my soul.
back in the day. I used to read the manuals as I drove home, and sometimes it'd be
Yeah.
nighttime, so I'd use the lights that were on the streets to kind of like, I could see the manual before I got home and played the game. Then I'll forget that my kid doesn't know what a manual is, and he'll be like, "What's a manual?" I'm
You'll
like,
be
"Oh,
like-
well, you see, there's these."
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. My bad. And he's like, and then Dad, you were talking about a VHS tape, and you had to rewind a movie before even starting it. You'd pick other movies while you rewind it. What is that? What's a rewind?
Yeah.
You poor child.
Yep.
It's dang. I don't know.
You know,
I'm in my
it's like
little
what
world
you do
right
with your Walkman too.
Yeah. and what's a Walkman, Dad? Oh, I'm sorry. You had a Discman? You've never made a mixtape, son. What happened? I mean, who had? Well,
Yeah.
damn. Oh, stop. Let's
Yeah.
stop. Can we just go on?
Another thing, I guess that kind of does get on my nerves with the video game industry is frickin' console wars, man. PC Master Race, Xbots, PS4 or Sony fanboys, and what do they call Nintendo? Just
I don't know.
damn, just enjoy your game consoles. If you're really going to be that dedicated of a gamer to one system, oh, the PlayStation 4 sucks. Well, I guess you're missing out on a lot of great games then, aren't you?
It's kind of absurd to be having such a huge loyalty to one console, because it's such a broad thing that within it exists so many things that you could have an individual opinion on, games. So that is a little bit absurd. You can't really say, oh, I hate the PS4. You got to look at the exclusives to the PS4. Do you hate Persona 5? Do you hate Horizon Zero Dawn? Do you hate, God of War? That kind of thing. So consoles are really all about the games, if you ask me. So to be loyal to one console over the other, it's dumb. That's all I'll say.
I agree. And then, kind of speaking on that note, there was a video that popped up in my feed today. I guess a lot of people have been talking about how Nintendo needs to reinvent the home console. The Switch needs to become more powerful, and how we just basically need another Xbox or PlayStation 4 on the market. And the guy talking about this goes, no, I kind of like how Nintendo has their own unique kind of feel to it, because I think at this point Nintendo's out of the console market. They're not trying to compete with Xbox or Sony. They're doing their own thing. I think a lot of people who own a Switch, it's a secondary console to them anyway.
I feel like Nintendo does not come out with enough new stuff to actually compete with a like PS4 or Xbox and stuff. I feel like they keep themes over time the same, and they just make new games, and that's part of the reason why I don't really play Nintendo all that much, is because to me, like, I've played all kinds of Mario games and I'm done with it. I want to play new things that don't seem, I guess, kind of regurgitated to me. And I think people are always going to play Nintendo games, and that doesn't even compare to PS4 or Xbox, or PC or whatever.
I might have an unpopular opinion here, but I think the Switch is a little bit overrated.
I mean, I can't even include my opinion because I'm not a huge Nintendo person anyway, so my opinion's pretty invalid in something like that.
I mean,
I guess you're asking me, or I'll just throw in my opinion. I think Nintendo has if they wanted to, they have a lot of potential to blow up the market, to blow PlayStation and Xbox out of the water, because they have these titles that they don't use at all. They're starting to use now. Like they announced Metroid Prime 4, which everyone waited for. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, a fantastic game, but it was one game it's bigger than any other open world game ever that's been released. And then you have F-Zero racing game, but they're not doing anything with a lot of their titles. And not to mention that the consoles that they put out, or the Switch isn't even, it's like a console hybrid. It's not as powerful as the PS4 or the Xbox One, but I start thinking if Nintendo had that mindset, or even that set of because they don't really play PlayStation 4 consoles or Xbox One consoles, because they didn't even know how a dashboard looked like while they were making the Wii, and people were telling them to make the online service just like the Xbox Ones or whatever. I just think that Nintendo isn't they don't broaden the horizons when it comes to looking at what else is being competed, because I don't think they really know what Xbox has or PlayStation 4 has. I don't know if they play those games or they look at it, but I feel like if Nintendo had their focus differently, they do have the potential there to just obliterate the competition, because there's a lot of titles on there that a lot of people would play, and with the type of budget that Nintendo would give, or if they really wanted it to make the biggest it could be, they could really just destroy Sony and Microsoft if they wanted to. But like we said, they are in their own world. They do have their own thing that's going on. And it's cool that it's different.
And it's portable.
It's portable.
PSP.
Let me refrain my statement. Okay, when I say the Nintendo Switch is overrated, I mean I'm talking about, I guess, it has some great games on there, but just there's a lot there's a lot of indie games. There's a lot of hype that surrounds the console to an extent, and I don't think the Nintendo Switch is really yet to be able to hit its true potential. And I think that's going to happen within the end of this year and the course of next year. I think we're going to kind of see what Nintendo has up their sleeve.
I hope.
Thoughts on that now?
Well, I think as far as Nintendo goes, I think sometimes they don't look at the big picture, and sometimes that hurts them, especially when it comes to their online service, and especially when it comes to developing newer IPs too as well. But if they would get their online service figured out, if they would get a modern voice client into the Switch, I think you're going to see, and we got to remember here, the Switch is actually kind of part of the next generation, so it's really not, are we really comparing the Switch to the PS4 and the Xbox One, or are we comparing the Switch to the PS5 that's not out yet, because it's kind of where they're at. But just as far as the Switch goes itself, I don't think Nintendo looks at the big picture a whole lot. There's a lot of stuff that they could do, especially like what Joe was saying with some of the IPs that they're holding on to, that they have on lockdown and stuff like that. A lot of these games that they could put out that would do well, especially if they came out and did something new and fresh with the Pokemon series, especially an open world Pokemon game or an all-inclusive Pokemon game, instead of just regurgitating the same experience over and over again with just different names and spaces and 100 new Pokemon. So there's definitely things that they could do. But to me, it's really all about what they're doing with their online service. And to me, that's really the only thing that's holding them back from the other consoles, because I think Nintendo has access to the best exclusives. They just don't do anything with them. Well, they're starting to do stuff with them. And I think that we'll see a huge boost when the 2 new Pokemon games come out and Smash Brothers comes out. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
I mean, and Nintendo's kind of already proven that with Mario and Zelda alone, that they can take risks and try something new and still make it really popular as well. So, I mean, hands down, Mario Odyssey probably would have won my Game of the Year had I, or came a close contender had I actually played it last year.
Well, if you just like take a look at like Nintendo, they have the best platforming game, Mario. They have the best action RPG, Zelda. They will have the best fighting game when it comes out. I mean, I'm sure no one really doubts that. So they have the titles. So what's really holding them back?
Yeah.
Like I said, well, I don't know. I forgot what I was saying. What did I say? I don't even remember, but
Only you will know, Shroom.
only I would know whatever I said. But
You're named after a Nintendo thing.
I am named after a Nintendo thing. And I just think those games that you mentioned on like Super Mario Odyssey or Zelda, the last 2 releases that came out, to be honest, I was completely tired of Super Mario or Mario. The Galaxy, I never got to play Galaxy 2, but I was, content with my experience with the first Galaxy, and I did enjoy it. But all I could think was like, how are they going to make something new with Mario? Like, what are they going to do? And yeah, they took their risk. I did enjoy it. It was actually a really good game. Zelda, I didn't think they'd ever do what they did with Zelda, like what they did. It's completely different, nothing like any other Zelda. And with how big and grand they made the worlds for both those games, Nintendo at this point, they don't have an excuse anymore to say that, oh, we don't have the budget or we can't do it. Or, not even a fan of Nintendo can say, well, Nintendo's a smaller company. They're not really going to do something that big. They just did something big with those titles. Those titles winning Game of the Years upon Game of the Years, blowing people out of the water. It completely caught me by surprise because I didn't think you could really do anything else in Mario or Zelda. And it shows that, yeah, there's still some creativity left in Nintendo, but they really have to give it their all. Because I think if they slack off, I don't know. I guess I'm just really hoping that Nintendo, like with these next titles that they bring out, I want them to be as big as they can be. I don't know.
They need to do better with newer IPs, because stuff like ARMS and even like Xenoblade, they're not reaching the level that they are with their other older IPs and even the newer iterations of their older IPs. They're just kind of... They need to drop
the gimmicks, I think.
That too.
I've played ARMS. It could be fun, but it's just like, I don't know, man. Like motion controls, I can see Nintendo still trying to push it, or they're trying to get people to interact with the game in different ways. It's cool, I guess, but I don't think it's going to get them very far. You know what I mean? So
no more cardboard shit either.
Damn.
I'm kind of curious, Abby, as an outsider, kind of seeing everything Nintendo's doing. What do you think they could kind of improve and maybe do? Like, what would be, I guess, to make you go out and buy a Switch? What would that take?
Provide popular games that aren't just Doom, that aren't just Skyrim, and stop focusing on I guess it's hard for how's the best way to word this? here's my opinion, and people are probably going to be like, oh my gosh, what? But I could probably go my entire life without playing another Mario game, without playing another Zelda game. I'm sorry. It feels so regurgitated to me. And that's something that has always turned me away from Nintendo. Don't get me wrong, I've grown up playing Nintendo and I've had a lot of good times with Nintendo, and there are just some things that you should always have, like Smash Bros. I will always enjoy a Smash Bros game, but I just come up with something new. A new game, not a new system, a new game. We need games that are new from Nintendo, and we also need smaller indie games to be injected into Nintendo as well. And I feel like Nintendo has a really big, I guess, childish based kind of PGG games. Majority of them, I feel like, are just like, I see children walking around with Switches more than I do adults. And I feel like they need to kind of focus on all ages, and rather than just, younger ages. Even though there are adults who, love Mario because they grew up with Mario. So they can appreciate Mario games and Zelda games because they grew up with them. I'm not hating on that, but I'm saying, for people who want a little more games than they can get somewhere else, like Skyrim. Like, you can get Skyrim on like any system at this point. But just, I really want to see a more variety in games that aren't Mario and Zelda and, all the Nintendo games that we've seen growing up,
It kind of goes along with what Nam was saying. They need new IPs.
Yeah.
They need new IPs, and also, I guess, to add to that, I think they need more third-party support. I hate to be the one to say it, but I mean, you can't really say it in either way. But if Nintendo would kind of support, I'm not saying it's the best game to support, but like if they had a Call of Duty that was released at the same time as other consoles, I think it could draw more people, or they had more adult games. Because you look at the Switch, I mean, like, or Nintendo consoles in general, the older ones, definitely there was a more broader expansion with like video games. I guess that's why the Super Nintendo era, the NES area, it's remembered so fondly because there's so many titles for so many different age groups. Nintendo 64, you kind of still had that, but it was definitely limited to because of the cartridges. Then you had the GameCube, where we just kind of like we started noticing Nintendo going a different direction. No way to connect to the internet like the other consoles. Then again, internet wasn't really a big thing at the time, for some exceptions to a few games for consoles. Then the Wii happened. It just, I don't know, like, I guess the library of games or the quality of games, they just weren't there. Then the Wii U happened.
It seems like over time the selection of games is just diminishing. I remember playing, like, on my Game Boy, I remember playing a Spider-Man game. Just like stuff like that. It's just like the amount of variety is just going way, way downhill, and they're just doing what they know is going to make them successful instead of taking risk and trying to include something different other than just an upgraded system. We need more than just an upgraded system.
And I think third-party developers are kind of undermining the potential the Switch has, because you mentioned the PSP and the Nintendo the Nintendo DS along with that. How many games were on those systems? There was a shit ton of them. There was a lot of
so many.
Yeah. And I think third-party developers need to look to the Switch almost as a way to make mobile games popular again, and when I talk mobile games, I'm talking games on the go that aren't on this.
Your phone.
Yeah. And I mean, that was the appeal of the Nintendo DS back in the day, kind of just going along. Everyone said the Japanese RPGs disappeared from home consoles. They just disappeared for 10 years. They didn't disappear, they just went to the handheld consoles. And you know, as powerful as the Nintendo Switch can be, and we've seen amazing graphics come out of this, I mean, imagine what they could do with some of these handheld games. To think you could have, you know, something along the lines of PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 capability of graphics on the go is really impressive. HD
I mean,
games
can
on-
you imagine though? Sorry to cut you off. Can you imagine the success of like a new PSP? If a new PSP came out right now, I guarantee you would be seeing people walking around with PSPs more than you would a Switch, because it is going to be focused on people of all ages, and you are going to see adults walking
Yeah.
around with their PSPs, but not a Switch, because there's not a lot of variety on the Switch.
And Sony gave up on the Vita pretty much afterwards, just kind of release. They didn't sell
They
very well,
shouldn't
they just
have.
abandoned
They
it.
shouldn't have. Yeah. I wish they would start it back up again, because I feel like now, especially when you are seeing everyone playing on their phones and mobile gaming is such a big thing for some reason, I feel like it would do really successful, especially since the Switch is so popular because it's on the go. You know, like they're not the first. Nintendo's not the first. Person to think of this,
Yeah.
but it's you go over time. I feel like some things come in style and they go out of style, but I feel like we're back in style with mobile gaming, as far as, being able to pick it up and go.
I
And
mean, Nintendo could even have a little bit of fun with it. You know, have this guy sitting there playing this mobile game on his phone. You see this thing pop up that says spend $3 to unlock the next level, and it has a voice. Are you tired of playing games where you free to play games where you have to pay for additional content? It shouldn't be that way. Play the Nintendo Switch. Play the new whatever the frick this new game we're advertising is. I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it. Anybody got anything else they want to add?
Achievement system.
Definitely. Nintendo needs to add that in there too.
That and a working party system.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, one thing that drew me away from I love the PlayStation 3. I thought it was an amazing console. I freaking loved it. But one thing that I never used my PlayStation 3 for was its multiplayer, unless it was Killzone or Resistance. I never used my PlayStation for multiplayer because the accessibility of being able to talk to friends was just so terrible. An effective party. You would think that a party system is so small and so tiny, but when you really want to play with friends or something, I think it really helped shape the way my friends, which console they picked up. They straight up said that the PlayStation is better in every other aspect, but the fact that it doesn't have a party system, we can't talk to each other while playing different games. It's not something that they wanted to play while we talk to each other. They'd be on their Xbox, but they'd be playing a PS3 game. And I kind of see the Switch that way, is that they're not staying up to date with what other consoles or other competitors are putting out there. I said something small an achievement system, a party system definitely is one of those things, because why would I be playing on a Switch? It'd be easier to play on a Switch and be able to talk to people. If I was playing Mario Kart or something on there, it's just, I guess, the necessity of having it is something small, but in the end, I think it does make kind of a big difference. I just think they need to stay up to date.
I mean, and
stuff
back
like
to
that, but-
achievements, there's a lot of games I'd buy on my Nintendo Switch and play, but I like the achievements. I can get them on PlayStation 4. I'm going to buy it on PlayStation 4. I'm going to buy it on Steam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if they're gonna, especially with what Shroom was saying just now about the party system, I would imagine there has to be something in the works with that, especially if they're going to sell us on playing these old-style NES games that we used to play couch co-op with through online means. So they're not going to really capture the experience that they want to capture unless this party system exists. So
Yeah. Exactly. And Smash Brothers coming up, I think you have to get a party system going. Play with friends,
definitely.
But, anything else we want to add to that, or? Well,
No.
Shall we close this bad boy out?
Let's do it.
Alrighty. I'm gonna let you do the honors, Shrooms.
Me. Damn. You know how long it's been?
I know,
Not
that's
that
why
long.
you need to do it.
I think Nam
All
should
right.
do it.
No.
Why?
Just because he said not to put him on the spot, so that means we have to put him on the spot.
I don't know how to close this out.
You always close your videos out in a certain way, Nom.
See ya? Like that?
Yeah. Was that it?
That was it.
That was it.
See ya! Is that better?